There's a major research project happening right now in Australia that most people aren't talking about. It's a government funded study, just over $1 million, running from 2022 to 2025, focused on what's called biotoxin related illness, including chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or CIRS. And what makes this study different is not just that it exists, it's how it's designed. They are not just collecting symptom reports. They are comparing patients who report illness after exposure to water-damaged buildings to healthy control subjects. And they're layering multiple types of data at the same time. They're looking at inflammatory signaling, specifically markers like IL-6. They're looking at regulatory peptides like alpha MSH, which are tied to immune and neuroendocrine control. They're testing for mycotoxins directly in biological samples. They're using metatranscriptomic analysis to evaluate microbial activity. And they're performing brain MRI volumetric analysis to look for neurological differences. At the same time, they are evaluating the home environment. That combination is the point, because it allows them to ask a much more specific question, not just, do patients feel sick, but can we measure a biological response that correlates with ongoing environmental exposure? Now, important distinction. The study has not released final conclusions yet, but the progress reports already show direction. They're seeing elevated inflammatory signaling, IL-6 in particular, in the affected group. They're identifying associations involving alpha MSH, which may reflect dysregulation in immune control. And they are actively analyzing how those biological signals relate to environmental findings. That's not proof yet, but it's not vague either. It's structured signal detection across multiple systems, and that leads to a very specific implication. For at least a subset of patients, this may not be a one-time exposure problem. It may be a continuous exposure problem, meaning the body is not reacting to something that happened in the past, it's reacting to something that is still happening. And if that's the case, then clinical treatment alone has limits. Because the input, the exposure, has not been removed, that is the shift this research is trying to define. From symptom-based illness to exposure-driven physiology. And if that framework holds, it changes how these patients are evaluated, diagnosed, and managed. That's why this study matters.